exciting encounter with men at the table. This is a place where men gather together in Daba style, conversations worth having. Today, I am so delighted, privileged, and excited to be joined by a very competent panel as we delve into something very, very interesting, which is looking at the boy child. And you see, if you follow groups like Boys to Men, what does it take for a boy to evolve into a man? And how do we take care of that path, making sure that the mental health is preserved and men remain men, or boys will always be boys? On my immediate right, I have a very famous person who's a proponent of men's welfare. Should I say that? Greyford is no stranger. He's always been talking about mental health issues for men and what makes a man a man. If you're looking for a definition, Greyford will be the man to go to. But not to outdo the young people. We say that a huge percentage of this country's population are young people under 30. The Gen Zs, we have Collins to represent them ably. And for those of you who are on the 4th floor and upwards and you've seen life from different floors, we have Kauta here. If you like, you can call him Mr. Mwale. For today, simply I'll call him Kauta. Gentlemen, welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you very much.
Okay, obviously we are very grateful to our sponsors, Roast and Rhyme, where we are right now shooting from there, and several other sponsors that will be scrolling on the screen as we progress in this discourse. Let's set the stage right. I want to find out and pick your brains. Is it true that all men want this independent, financially stable woman, beautiful, wearing high stilettos 6 inches, and they are classified as independent women? Or are independent women responsible for the demise and the reduction of men and their relevance in society? Have we got the balance right? Can I hear from you, the elder on the show?
Well, first and foremost, I'd love to believe that there's nothing wrong with a professional woman. And as a man, if you set yourself out to go and marry that kind of woman, I think it's very important that you appreciate what that comes with. She's going to push in long hours in her work. Being a professional myself, I have worked where sometimes they ask you to stay later than the traditional 5 o'clock. You'll be coming back home 20-21, depending on what time of the financial year it is. So I think as a person who endeavors to go and marry and become a husband, a loving husband for that matter, and this is the kind of woman that you've set your sights on, it is important to also weigh the challenges that come with that and be able to understand if you can properly navigate without conflict those hurdles. But ultimately also it must be about the person that you have married. Just like not every housewife is hands-on as is expected of every full-time housewife, I think conversely, even the professional women, there are those that just leave it and say, because I'm a professional woman, I can't have to do anything at the household level. But then there are those who still have retained the right to be able to nurture and run a home. So basically, I think men should be able to analyze the kind of person that you are. What is your character? What is your preference? Then let it marry with the person that you actually go for. So that you reduce on the conflicts.
But Kauta, and I'll bring in the other two gentlemen. I mean, there's an old adage, and people will say that when a woman is successful and she has money in her pocket, she calls the shots. It's got nothing to do with character at that point, whether you are the most timid husband, you've got a great character. It's all about who calls the shots and who has the money in the pocket, who wears the trousers in the house. Is that any reason why, statistically, there are more independent divorced women as opposed to the common housewife? I'm trying to draw an analogy here because you're saying a man must look at the qualities looking for, but there's a fiercely successful independent woman, beautiful, in high heels and a very promising job. A woman that will go on business trips for a week, out of town, out of the country. A woman doesn't have time to cook because she's tired as you are. What are you saying to men? Should men be marrying these type of women, the independent women?
Well, again, I reiterate that there's nothing wrong with the independent woman. However, I think culturally you need to appreciate the fact that women are hypergamous by nature. They're basically looking for a man they can look up to in different strengths. It could be social status, it could be the education, it could be the income bracket. And if a woman, I'll give you an example. If every time there's a need at home that has to be fulfilled, and then it has to be hard to either send money home or hire a plumber or do anything to solve any case that comes home. Eventually that respect that she has for her spouse as the man, the looking up to element is diffused, and then you find that the submission also wins. And when you do not have the submission that you require, that is essential for having, I think, a peaceful and enjoyable marriage, then things begin to pop up. You get to see the cracks. So ideally, it's not about the fact that she's a professional. Look, she could be a doctor, you could be a professor. She could earn 30K a month and you could earn 50. You know, you would be the go-to person when she wants anything. Oh, baby, there's no fuel in my car, and okay, just go, my Tom card is on the dressing table, just pick it up and then refill your car. Even if she's accomplished and is a career woman, the fact that she still looks up to you, she still is going to be the ideal woman for all purposes and intents. However, it is when she surpasses you in most of these spheres and she no longer looks up to you, she can solve whatever she needs to do, and then you become more as a dependent, a brother who she's living
Or
with.
a firstborn son.
Yes. And at that point, the respect that you expect from this woman will not be there. And so now you'll be whipping a dead horse, because now you want her to give you a certain kind of respect that she won't give because she doesn't have it.
Okay. Viewers, there you have it. We are having conversations worth having. And that is what Men at the Table is all about. At this point, I think, Greyford, you need to come in, because we have just quoted statistically that, the so-called independent or very successful women, they are in an echelon, a bracket where the divorce rates are higher compared to the traditional woman who stays home as a housewife. And we've heard what Kauta has said to bridge the gap. Akamba vizungu. Imwe zona. Mukazi ngati akuchina drama. Angakukonde.
Thank you very much for that question.
Yeah.
First of all, I very much agree with Mr. Mwale. The problem isn't necessarily the fact that the woman in question is independent. The problem is how exactly she's been cultured growing up. Okay? I think much of what we are today and how we relate to society is based on the kind of values that were instilled to us or in us, where we're coming from. I'll give an example. For those ladies that have had the privilege, the rare privilege to grow up under a father, they are able to decode issues of authority in the home. Okay, they understand that the ultimate authority figure in the home is the father, and then the mother plays that contributory, supportive role, being sort of secondary to some degree.
Right.
And so with that comes the understanding that as a woman, and of course from a biblical perspective, my role is that of a supportive individual, a partner. So even where, as a woman, she earns more, for instance, than the man in the home, if she has the understanding that my role is that of a supportive partner, that would not be used as a weapon to then try to usurp the authority of the man in the home, because she understands that regardless of how much I may have, regardless of how much I may earn.
So, Greyford, where is the man, deriving his authority? Because his pockets are empty. She's got the money. This authority issue. I mean, if you define authority, where is he drawing the authority from?
Doc, I think the biggest problem right now, and this is being peddled, I think, generally by many people, is the assumption that headship or a man's authority is simply derived from his ability to provide. That's the biggest mistake that people are making. First of all, I really like to delve into some scripture.
Yeah, please, let's have it.
References, so that we can be able to appreciate perhaps what roles both man and woman do play. When you go to the Garden of Eden, for instance, you will notice that the first person to have been created, of course, was the man, Adam himself. And before Adam was created, the Bible does provide that the garden was created in such a way that everything was already available. Okay? So, for the man to be created, God felt that there was no one to work the garden. Okay? And so God created the man to work the garden as the primary role of the man, to work the garden. Not for purposes of provision, no, but for purposes of simply advancing or making that garden continue to become what it was. Right? And this is why you see that later on God creates animals and he brings them to the man, and the man names them and sort of gives them that kind of definitive structure in terms of what role they'll play in that particular garden.
Yes.
So the time that the woman was coming in, everything was already set. The man was already living his purpose, working in the garden. The woman came in. At no point will you see that the man is providing. Why? Because God, who happens to be the provider, was already providing for both the man and the woman. But the issue here came in when, of course, the fall happened. And then, the case was that now, for you to be able to obtain or for you to be able to feed, you will now have to sweat, right? To obtain. That was the case that was given.
Yes.
But it doesn't say that, the Bible doesn't say that then your authority becomes tied to your ability to provide. That structure was
Isn't that implied, Greyford? Isn't that implied?
It is not
If
implied.
God says that man will sweat on his brow to put bread on the table, but now the woman is sweating on her brow to put bread on the table, then tables have changed.
No, they haven't. Remember, at no point, the ultimate provider is God. And when it comes to the man and the woman, in the relationship, in the marriage, both of them are providers. The difference is that the man is the leader, meaning that he simply leads every process that happens in the home. Okay? It doesn't relinquish the woman from providing. That's wrong. And I think a lot of people like to quote that, I think Timothy account and all that. I think at a later stage we'll discuss that. But again, not to drive away from, I think, the earlier question. The issue isn't that the women are empowered or they are independent. The issue is that most or a lot of these women who are independent do not understand their contributory role that they ought to provide in the home when they are paired together with a man who happens to be their husband.
Okay, fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are joining us in this discourse, we are having a great time here. Conversations worth having with men at the table, and these men at the table are trying to demystify the mystery behind why do we have a high divorce rate among women that are highly successful, and why is it that the man who's not doing so well is the casualty? Collins, you're young and you represent the Gen Z generation. If you dated someone maybe 10 years older than you who was more financially stable, and obviously you are on your way up to making the ladder, would you expect them to bring their salary to you in an act of submission and to recognize you as the priest of the home, the head of the home? Do you think you can earn such a right if you dated up, that as opposed to if you dated your level or down?
Thank you very much for the question, Doc.
Yes.
My belief is that it's very difficult to manage a woman who's a bit older than you because they have a lot of experience. And women older tend to carry a lot of baggage. And they tend to want to have a lot of control. Would I be able to manage a woman 10 years older than me? I think I would, but it's not my preference. I'm going to go for somebody younger.
You've got the strength to manage 10 years up.
I can manage 10 years up because I'm trying to build a legacy. I want a woman younger than me.
Yes.
Who could bear my kids.
Okay.
The thing is, the mistake most women make is that they forget that marriage is an institution. It has laws and rules. And the moment you abrogate those laws, you're going to have issues. A lot of independent women are divorcing today because they are entering into marriage with a different set of rules and not the ones provided by family.
Okay. So what pressure does your age group face when you marry a young lady, younger than you or your age group, who does better economically than you, has a better job, has a better pay, has a better social high standing? What pressure do you go through as a young man?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue a lot of us young men go through is a lot of women who are doing pretty well
Yes.
usually want to take upwards and not below. So the challenge you have is an issue of respect. A lot of them don't want to control you. They want to tell you where to go, how to move, because they feel they have a better say than you. So that's been one of the biggest challenges. I actually dated a lady who, she had her own car, she was working, she had a big role. We were probably around the same age, but the challenge I had was she wanted to bring her director role into the relationship. And unfortunately, that relationship didn't survive.
Direct you in everything.
She wants to
in the
control.
kitchen,
She wants to control
in the
everything.
bedroom, in your finances. She's the director.
She wants to be the director.
Yeah.
So as a young man, you want to be respected, you want to be listened to, and you want to be the one to give the directions.
Let's go back to the elder. Now, Kauta, tell me, so what is the 411? How do we solve this paradox? I mean, what advice are you giving young men today who aspire to marry? What qualities should they be looking for in a woman? Because today, if you look at society, we're not going to run away from this problem. We have how many banks? 20, 21 banks? 7 of the CEOs are female executives. In parliament, the numbers are propping up. Everywhere you go, there's women representation. Women are on the rise. What advice would you give? Have we given too much emphasis to the girl child to the point where the woman is now just, on autopilot, sailing through life, and you prepared the boy child, and this has worked to his detriment? What are you saying as an elder?
I think first and foremost we should not deviate from God's plan.
Yeah.
The leadership role in the marriage
Yes.
was ordained by God. Okay, He creates that structure. Now, as a man,
Yes.
I think when we started off, I mentioned about the hypogamous nature of women. There's a skit I once saw where this guy is complaining because he's talking to a lady. They've grown up in the same neighborhood. It's a shanty neighborhood, and they both live in that shanty neighborhood. And this guy wants to make a pass at this young lady, and she tells him, "Te we level yandi." Now the guy is wondering,
Mind your level.
"Tukarakombo ni moine, twaide pa school ni moine." How is it you're not my level? You understand?
Yes.
Because already she's looking down for them for being at the same level. Okay? So I think when men, grown and the ones that are coming behind alike, begin to recognize that, look, women, this is a natural thing that they have in them. So, is it okay to go and marry somebody who's older than you? Well, there are some outliers. There's some women you find that no matter how successful she has become, no matter how affluent the family she's coming from, she's handing over the mantle to you to be in that safe space. However, those are just outliers and you don't have to depend on that. Once you know that a woman is looking high up, even when you get married, okay? If, say, you met at university, personal development is very important. Because you meet at university, you've both got undergraduate degrees, and she goes on to have a master's, PhD, and opens up her own company, and then you're still probably working for that same institution and you haven't really developed personally. That element of looking down on you still creeps in. So I think, first and foremost as men, we should take that as a standard that women have. Okay? We should not sugarcoat that. We should appreciate that this is what it is. So, as long as I am going to be at the same level or below, I should not expect higher. I mean, Doc, a man a man is comfortable marrying a full-time housewife. Whatever she wants, he'll do that. Two people, on the other hand, they married both male and female, and then the man loses his job. 3 months in, the woman is complaining.
Yeah.
Never Musonda, never Muchitrefi, just never Ndechita. How did we get there? So it shows you that they are not, by nature, at least the majority of them, willing to take up those roles when you can't. Okay? In the same vein, if you are pushing in 50-50, they're still looking at you as somebody who's not doing that. And I think first and foremost, men must realize that. So once you get that out of the way, then you look for a woman that you know that it's not about imposing your authority on that person. There are women that you know that once I associate with them, they already have it in them based on those balances that I've already talked about. And once you marry somebody and she already holds you in high esteem, you don't have to force certain things. She'll fit into that role without you having to fight about it. And I think as men, we dropped the ball sometime back in history because we had a leadership role, and we had all the finances with us, and the women across the globe were basically full-time housewives, and men became abusive. Starting from that abuse, the women movement begins to rise because they believe that when you level the scales financially, socially, then you have better marriages. Unfortunately, that also goes against the ideal.
It's created its own problems.
Yes, it goes against the ideal of creation. So men had that leadership role, and the abusive nature should not have crept in. That is where men dropped the ball. Women being in charge does not necessarily mean that the marriage is going to be more stable. Okay, a woman having more money, a woman having more network, more resourceful at home does not make it better, because ultimately she begins to look down on you. Okay, so I think as men, when we are choosing a partner, we should know. You don't want to go and impose yourself. You don't want to have.
Should we marry down as a rule? I mean, because marrying up has got problems.
As far as I am concerned,
yeah,
marrying down works.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll give you a practical example of myself. I'm in my second marriage. In my first one, I married down, but at some point, she leveled up. We're at the same level, and things just fell apart. Okay?
Yes.
Having the normal problems that you have in a marriage, the moment you find that somebody gets to have a job that has got an income that rivals yours, or at least is a little bit higher, 8 months later, we're separated. You understand? But what you see, when you're talking about separation and divorce and all those things, what people bring to the table is something else. They'll be talking about, no, she did this, he did this, and so on and so forth. But then there are certain fundamental issues that are at play. And then you need to appreciate and understand that there's no way if somebody was lazy 10 years and then 2 years, certain shifts in certain status levels, and then that laziness creeps up and is the reason why you break off. So based on that, I always believe that there is a certain, as men, because of that nature that we have, at least I have identified in women, I believe that we should always date downwards. Because that is the only way. If a woman says, oh, I've got a flat tire, you're either going to have that changed, or you know a mechanic who can do that. If a woman has got her own mechanic, she can call that mechanic, she can call a plumber, she can call an electrician. She views the spouse as dispensable material. So remember that even in the Bible, man says is given the responsibility to love his wife, and the wife is asked to submit. So the elements of submission also have to do with that issue of resourcefulness, dependability, and all those things. Once she can't see all that in you.
I'm cutting you short there, Kauta. You've mentioned a very important point. Mule pima means no,
yes.
Yes. I mean, Greyford, I think you need to come in at this point. Should we all be looking south? Should we be looking down in order to pick a spouse? Should that be a criteria when we're picking a spouse? I mean, this is getting all too confusing. A woman was down there, as he rightly explained, when the men abused the situation. A woman levels up and maybe even, goes above. It creates a different, unique problem. Sir, please, we want to hear your views.
Yeah, I think on this one, I will not side with Mr. Mwale.
Yes.
And here's why. At what point then do you settle as a man? Because look at it this way. Supposing you're married down, and then during the process of the marriage, you happen to, educate this woman and, support her so much that she starts out earning you. It means at that particular point she's now above you. Does it mean the marriage comes to an end? Okay, because even then she will start developing that contempt towards you, saying or feeling that at this point I think I'm probably doing better than you financially. I remember some time back I was listening to a radio station and it was a calling thing. And one gentleman called in and said that at the time he married his wife, he only had, I think, a certificate. His wife only had, I think, a grade 12. But I think he was a police officer or a teacher, one of the two. And he took her to school. She went and studied some banking and finance, and then she got a job in the bank, and she felt she was better exposed to other bankers and other people who were elite. And she felt she had gotten to a point where he was no longer her level. So she started misbehaving and going for men who are level. So now, such situations cannot be avoided even in an event when you do marry downwards. Unless the solution is that when you marry downwards, you simply keep the person you marry in that same level. In which case, I think it defeats the whole
You
purpose.
don't develop them, you leave them there. Yeah.
No, but I think, not to cut you short, I think I had mentioned something to say personal development. Marry down, but don't leave your personal development in abeyance. Because what's supposed to happen is empower your woman. If she's interested to go back to school, let her go back to school. If she wants to start a company, you can empower her, but don't remain behind. You get the point. Also, personal development on your part should play a role. He had certificates. So if the person who had the grade 12 certificate only, and he had some craft or whatever certificate, how does she then, using your resources, get to even have a degree in banking and finance, and they're still there? So my point was, even your personal development, don't neglect it for the sake of the home or this woman. Okay, just as an example, also, I know if I had a friend of mine of blessed memory, and he committed suicide for this very reason. He had no interest in school, so at some point he dropped out and started doing business and became quite good at it. Then he got this young lady pregnant. She had done with grade 9, but then she couldn't go forward because of financial constraints. So she stayed at home. But when they had their first child and the child grew up, and then they told him, okay, get her for a wife. He looked at her grade 9 and he was like, these are good results. Takes her back to school, 10, 11, 12. She's done. I think she went and did some course at Evelyn Horn. And then she joined the government institution. Now the uncle came and said, no, come and join this government institution because you've got the papers now. When she did that, he was no longer the kind of person that she would look up to.
Yeah.
And she went and started having other affairs. And that actually made him fall into depression. So I think at the end of the day, even when we need to realize, and this is not an isolated incident, we hear these stories over and over again. So my point is, let's marry downwards, but as we improve the woman, let us also improve ourselves.
Sorry, Dom.
Yes.
I have a pushback on that.
Yes.
So because you see, supposing I'll get back to the story I gave. So when the gentleman had called in, so he mentioned that at that time when he was making the call, he was pursuing his PhD, right? Yeah. So meaning he had leveled up as well. Now you see, we sort of do not have so much control in terms of I think the kind of luck that we may have. I think in the the marketplace. So take for instance, you marry down, and then you start educating or empowering the woman. And then at that particular point, supposing you don't have the kind of finances that would enable you to be, supporting her at the same time, also leveling yourself up. It means that at some point, she is going to, be above you and you'll be down there. So for you to be able to surpass her again, you will now need to sort of draw the finances or the financial support away from her back to yourself. But while you're doing that, and supposing both of you do now get to the apex of your academic, qualifications, and maybe even at the apex of, your careers. But bear in mind that it's also very possible that she might be working for an organization that pays her more than the organization that pays you. That's also a problem. So meaning it's sort of a never-ending problem. Okay, it means supposing she's maybe bank's not private. Supposing she's CEO of a bank, and you are probably MD of a non-bank or some other institution, but you get less than she does, and she has all these other incentives, and you don't. That's already another problem. It means she's above you again. So regardless of how much you may want to also better yourself to surpass her, it now becomes a competition, if you ask me. It means that at some point, you may out-earn her, and then she works hard or she gets promoted, maybe she goes to board level and she's out-earning you. At some point, one of you will have to eventually out-earn the other. And what
it becomes a rat race, yeah?
Exactly. How out-earns? How then do you resolve that?
Yeah. I want to just talk about something that is very interesting, and I want to see what the young generation is thinking. We are talking about suicide cases being on the increase among young people. And not only young people, statistically, there are more young men that kill themselves, terminate their lives, than there are women. Clearly, the mental health of men has gone all over the place. What is causing this? Have we paid too much attention, too much emphasis on preparing the girl child for the challenges the world will throw at them, at the exclusion, at the expense of the boy child? Collins, you're young. Do you think you have been well prepared to take on the challenges of life as a boy growing into a man? And would you also specifically share what type of preparation have you gone through?
I was raised by a single mom who did her best to ensure that I had the best opportunities.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I believe a lot of women are more advantaged than young men now because we've had this feminist movement that started in the United States that has had a core focus on women education, women empowerment. And I think we've already passed the stage of equality between boys and girls, and now we are at a stage of inequality where, even for example, even if you were to start an NGO and try to promote the boy child, you won't get as much funding.
No one is interested.
No one is interested. If you start an NGO with girl child opportunities, you will get a lot of funding and support. So the major issue we have now is inequality. How do we recalibrate? How do we bring back equality for both the boy child and the girl child? I think the message should just be about children in general, whether boy or girl, but the children themselves will all need equal opportunities. Because I can see a future where we're going, where we'll have more criminals, more gangs, more girls getting raped. Already we have a crisis of women being raped because a lot of men are isolated. Who's talking to the man? Who are these young boys talking to? They don't have access to people who can educate them, who can support them. A lot of young men are killing themselves because of abuse in alcohol, alcohol abuse, drugs, substance abuse. So right now I think there's a big level of inequality going on.
Yeah. And do you think you have received mentorship from the elders in society? I am talking about the Greyfords, myself, Mr. Mwale here. I mean, what structured type of mentorship, training, advice have you received growing up? Saying that you're tender, very young and handsome, but what have you drawn anything from men themselves? Under what platforms have you done that?
Well, I mean, in Zambia it's very limited. You don't get opportunities to talk to so many men. Unfortunately, we don't have brotherhoods or a band of brothers where young men can connect with older people. A lot of young men are watching things on YouTube now and isolating themselves. So those platforms are still yet to be developed in Zambia.
Gentlemen, a lot of men are getting slaughtered, butchered by women, their wives, and in some cases their girlfriends. There's so many incidents on social media where a girlfriend stabs boyfriend or a wife kills the husband. What has led to this? As a woman just suddenly realized that apart from being superior or can be superior economically, they can also take the lives of men in their hands. We read so many of these stories. And yet the opposite is also true. A recent story about a female teacher, an adult teacher, who coerced a young boy who was in grade 9 to make her pregnant, has received very little media attention and from the NGOs. I believe that boy was defiled or abused. It may have been a pleasurable encounter, but the woman ends up being pregnant, a teacher pregnant for a grade 9 pupil, and nobody's talking about it. Where have we lost it? You talked about the balance. It's no longer about equalizing and getting the balance right. There is an imbalance now. You say, Collins, you say it's an inequality now towards the men, and there's no forums. Growing up as a young man raised by a single mother who will direct advice to you and mentor the young men into the men they're supposed to be. But elder, munet poshan bakaram.
Yo, but here's what I think. Socially, the man's suffering has been accepted as a norm. There was a time, there's a young man who used to flaunt his relationship on social media. And then I think he caught the girlfriend cheating, or she dumped him, or something in those lines. So I stumbled upon this post. He was crying, and the messages, the comments from women, it was as though this is it now. Actually, women actually love that when they get to see a man sob, a man crying because he's been dumped or he's been cheated on. They get to like that. They feel like it's retribution. I asked a friend of mine, I said, retribution to what? Because you guys are cheating just as much as the guys do. Okay, if not more. Because today, if you walked into a place that is an entertainment place, you find a number of women actually unaccompanied. It's different from the olden days where you had, for a woman to be in such a place, she had company, unaccompanied. And you guys are doing whatever you want to do. So why do you still feel the need to celebrate when a brother cries? And moreover, the thing with guys is, when you reach a point where you actually get to cry, it's because you've failed to contain it. No, we have this belief. I could be in an abusive marriage, okay? Every time I'm ducking pots and pans and knives, if I had to report that to anybody, either a counselor, whether to the police, everybody would be like, oh, I want to know what's the about me. Yeah? Anybody else going to talk about you understand where I am coming from. And so most men actually bottle it up. And even with the young men growing up, you find that the other day I wrote something on social media saying, don't tell the boy child that it is not right to cry. But however, you need to tell him that even when he does, nobody cares. Okay? So you raise a child where he knows that you shouldn't cry and he bottles it in. Okay? So if I get cheated on, the first thing my fellow male folk would tell me, you understand? How then do we find excuses for this vice? It's the same thing. If you're talking about adultery, if it's done by a woman, people are looking to find why did she cheat? You're not man enough. Where were you? What did you do to her? Maybe you cheated first. But when it's done by a man, you see
what they do.
Yes,
this is who they are.
Yes, this is who they are. There's this stereotype that everybody falls into. So when the man now cries, everybody likes, no, that's retribution, you know. So I think we need to change this, and I tell most women,
How do we change it?
just because you have had 10 men break your heart in the past, it'll be foolish of you to find an 11th man and he's treating you right, and you decide to break his heart because you want to revenge the 10. Look, now you've been favored. Now you've found a man who has your interests at heart, somebody who wants to cherish you, love you, okay, spend forever with you. But because you're broken, you decide, now this is the one I get to break.
Even just to add on the grade 9-year-old student who was defiled by the teacher.
Yes.
On Facebook, when you look at the comments, people were celebrating the young man. What do you want me with?
He was being praised for sleeping with a very old teacher and making her pregnant, even though he was actually coerced into doing that. So to the public, he was a hero. Is that the type of mentorship we want to give the boy child today? That you are a hero when you sleep with so many women, that you are a hero when you sleep with your teacher, that you are a hero when you sleep with your sister's friends. I mean, what kind of structures, Greyford, do we need to put in place? I mean, how do we raise the boy child to be an outstanding child in society that grows into a man to protect society and be the priest in society? This young lad who has been coerced to have sex with a teacher, when he hardly knows that he can't even afford to support the child, he's become a national hero. People are saying, well done, well done. You've heard the comments from the young man. Where do we take it from here, Greyford?
Thank you, Doc. And you know what's funny? When I was reading through the comments as well, I think some of the prominent questions went something like, how old was the boy? And, were they dating? So it's almost like they were trying to find a justification as to why this elderly teacher had this,
defiled the young juvenile. Yes.
So mostly trying to sort of take the blame away from the teacher, the wrong teacher, to sort of make it an equal thing. Like, the boy wanted, he's a boy after all. Yeah, but then, like I think Mr. Mwale mentioned, that's the problem that we have right now, because society now sees the struggles of the male as the norm. And I think it's very important that it should even go as far as maybe altering the law itself. Take for instance, you will not find defilement in the penal code like in favor of the boy child.
The boy child.
There's a decent assault.
Yes, it's a decent assault.
Yes, you will in the GBV Act as well. You will not really find so many things that are in support of...
And yet men are getting battered left, right and center.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because even harassment itself, it's more on the side of the women. So already you can tell that there is that bias towards women being seen as the ultimate victims, and that men can never be the victims. They will always be the ones who are perpetrators. So I think there's need, now that I think all this is coming out more prominently, to shift the tables and really just level the playing field and look at both men and women as potential victims to these vices. We have a community of men, for instance, and just last week we were having a discussion on WhatsApp, and one of them said, I think he's in his early 20s, he said, I had 3 women growing up who slept with me like continuously. He defiled me. Okay, and I think the few people that he tried to open up to, they ridiculed him. They felt, but you're a man, obviously that was good for you.
It's like a rite of passage.
Yes, like a rite of passage. And so you see, now that he's older, I think even based on how he expressed himself, there's that bitterness and that anger, and him seeing that this has continued to persist, where when children are being defiled by elderly women, there's still people are not really trying to have the women, I don't know, on the side of the man, on the side of the man there's the vitende, on the side of the woman we don't know what's there. No one is talking about it that way. There's that bitterness that keep brewing. But then I learned that there are actually even more men in that same community that we have who have gone through that, who've been defiled, and they just don't come up. So there's so many out there who've been victims, but they just will never come out. Why? Because there's always ridicule waiting for them when in the moment that we decide to share this. I think it's time that society, and of course not trying to be victims as men, far from that, but also to look at the effect and impact that these vices, these behaviors have on the development of the boy child. Because before we know it, I think some of these predatory tendencies that we're seeing in these Gen Zs are probably coming from the fact that growing up they were defiled and all that. So they are confused that they've not had any psychological help, and now they've become these predators, and now they're doing it to other people. Again, not to sort of provide an excuse for those who are defilers. I think yes, they need to be castrated or something like that. But I think the issue, you need to look at the underlying cause of all these issues. It cannot just be that someone has been defiled because men cannot control their sexual feelings, and so they go ahead and sleep with young people. Let's look at their upbringing, where they're coming from. Some time back, we did do a small research just to understand why is it that most perpetrators of domestic violence are men. Okay, and what we discovered was that, what we learned from the findings was that most of them, this is something that it's an inability to be able to properly process issues of conflict, right? And it's because in their upbringing, they were either exposed to such kind of violence, gender-based violence, domestic violence, or they were in a family where they were not properly taken care of, they were not properly cultured to learn how to better handle their emotions, how to deal with conflict. So now they are not fully developed, and they've grown up with men who, whenever they're in a position of conflict, the first instinct that comes to their mind is not to be rational, but to fight, to beat, and to do all these things. So the problem has to be resolved from down there when you are being brought up. So that's why I think it's very important for all of us, if possible, to find ways in which we can seek some kind of psychological counseling from these professionals, so that we can understand exactly how much of our upbringing has an effect on how
you are advocating for counseling, but in so many people in so many quarters will say men themselves are not even looking for these same safe spaces you're talking about. They're not advocates of fora where men can talk about issues and be cancelled. And for me, what hasn't come out is a blueprint. When you're raising the girl child, there's a blueprint. At this stage, this is how you deal with them. At this stage, this is how you deal with them, how you prepare them. What is the blueprint for preparing a boy into a man? I mean, there's something here, there's a disconnect. And, as Kauta said, men have been accustomed to just cry in silence, to cower away in silence, to suffer in pain. And we have a lot of broken men out there, boys inclusive, that are suffering severe mental issues. Why? Because they've been on the receiving end of a failed platform, and men, as you said, Mr. Mwale, dropped the ball somewhere along the way. What happened to the old style, traditional indabas in the village, the fireplace, where we passed on knowledge and prepared young men to be the next generation of hunters, of leaders, community level, even at national? What happened to that? Do we have a society that is completely dysfunctional? And as Collins said, is it true that most young men that you run into today that are coming from the Gen Z space have been raised by a single parent, and that single parent is a woman? Gentlemen, what is the way forward as we look to conclude? Can you come in, sir?
Well, I think the matter itself is quite complex.
Yeah.
Because we have to undo a lot of damage that has been done progressively over the years. But however, I always believe that no matter how far down the wrong road you have gone, you can always turn back and do things right. There are certain, and as I am answering your question, I'd also love to delve into something
Absolutely.
you mentioned.
Yes.
You see, there's this, I call it nonsensical presumption when it comes to the boy. They say that somebody says you can't be defiled because the very fact that you had an erection, it denotes consent. But I think we need to debunk that and appreciate the fact that, look, especially when they're going through that hormonal change and all that, it's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
It's not necessarily because he wants to engage in sexual intercourse. It's because that's what happens. God touches you, and that's the reaction that the body gives you. And we need to go back and relearn that and understand that, look, he didn't say yes. The body reacted yes, but it doesn't mean that's what he wants. Okay? And I think most of this is, I believe, as men also, we do not want to challenge certain stereotypes that are brought to the fore. Like even the same thing where, you know that actually men reinforce the stereotypes that most women bring up in society. Okay? Like the issue where, say, no, men don't cry. Then I will go and reinforce it to a fellow man and say, boy, nobody doesn't tell him how. You get the point. But remember that some of these things are coming up because somebody somewhere does not want to take accountability of their actions. Okay? And I say this to my family, especially the female side of my family. I tell them, so why is it? So I ask my sister, if I have to choose between me and my wife, who do I pick? I'm your sister. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Your son has a wife. He has to make a very crucial decision between going your way or going his wife's way. I'm the mother. Okay? Brilliant. Your husband has to decide between what the mother wants and what you want. Which direction do you take? I'm the wife. I'm like, okay, so you are important in all these spheres of men that surround you. But if you take it that your son must choose you over his wife, why is your husband choosing you over his mother? You understand?
That's a fair point.
If me as your brother, I have to choose you over my wife, why is your husband choosing you over his sister? Okay? So the issue is you want to have it all and don't want to, that's why you'll never find a father-in-law and a son-in-law at loggerheads. The father-in-law knew that I handed over this daughter to my son-in-law and now he's the custodian. Okay? Even if I still have a relationship with my daughter, I know that the husband should take precedence over me.
Yes.
Okay? So now all these small things that as men, even when we get older, because most of us choose to take a route where we don't want to ruffle the feathers or disturb the waters and make them murky. So we let these stereotypes get embedded, and now it leaves the whole thing, in disarray. So I think it starts with the small things. Okay, because in most homes you find that this young man, not yet married, he tends to pick a woman. If his uncle was giving him advice, he would be giving him advice based on, how do you relate, and what do you think? Why do you think she's the perfect woman for you? He wants to know if these guys connect because they don't like her. Maybe because she seems to be controlling him more than they appreciate, and they don't want her. So I think these small things, even from the family setup, most of us men should be able to put our foot down and say, no. As a man, because if I take a stand, over my young brother's affair, where I say, hey, put my sister away, put my mother away, he is learning. He will also learn that, look, even when I have a son, I should raise them like this. With my own son, I should be able to put my wife away and say, don't this stranglehold over him. Don't believe that because, no, come
on, why is there competition there?
Yes, there shouldn't be a competition. You've got me, I'm your husband.
Yes.
If anybody should be buying your car, it's me.
Yes.
Okay? Once the men who have gone through this take a stand and say, these things should come to an end. Half the time I've seen most men would rather not have an occasion for having feed.
The mother-in-law will always be in the picture somehow.
Yes.
The control aspect.
You understand? You know, you find that your aunt walking through your house, for the ask,
that's how she manages.
This is her house.
Yes.
It's her space.
Yes.
Can we leave her be? Now they want you to find the problem with something that you have been living at peace with. So I think we need to start it from there.
Right. Gentlemen, this is very insightful. And if you're joining us, viewers, in this discourse, which is picking the salient issues, the critical issues affecting the mental health of men and how we prepare men to face the challenges of society today, then we are really grateful you could. And if you are an employer and you have a lot of employees that are men in your workforce, part of the productivity chain is to get in the mindset of those men and be able to talk to them, plant the right attributes. Because quite frankly, what's coming out from this conversation, there are gaps in the home setup, gaps at the school setup level, gaps at community level, and on how a man is supposed to evolve into a man. And these gaps sometimes can only be dealt with when they seek professional help. Professionals like Greyford, Mr. Kauta, and indeed this platform, Men on the Table, will be delighted to come and talk to your workforce and talk to the men in that place so that we can get them in the right space and in a safe space. Before we conclude, gentlemen, let me get your views on what now we should do as men to react to this whole thing. Must we chase our wives that we married up or we married down and they have now progressed, and maybe for some reason or the other we can't level up? Or should we just change the tactics and skin this cat differently? What should we be looking for? Your concluding remarks. I'll start with you, young man, because obviously you are looking for a wife. I see the way you're licking your lips. It's okay. It's okay to want something good.
I think it's an issue of education. I think both the male child and the girl child have to be educated. Times have changed. We were in days where our parents, maybe the dad would come from work, from the mines, he'd be the provider. Now we're in a dispensation where it's a partnership. We both need to work together to build our own home. So it's an issue of education and people having the right mindset before getting into these things.
And what are you looking for in a woman yourself?
God-fearing, respectful, down to earth.
Doubtful, you said God-fearing? Down to earth. Are there any down-to-earth women today? Mr. Kauta, Greyford, I'd like to meet one. Well, I'm not saying anything. Greyford, where are we taking this in conclusion?
What needs to happen is that, look, the reason why there are these gaps is because at some point, I think from a familial setting, one parent was missing. Either that parent became too busy with work or whatever seemed to have been more important than providing their input in terms of raising their family.
Yes.
And so these gaps began. But not only that, but society itself also, I think, did away with those endeavors, just men alone sitting to have these discussions. I think I mentioned earlier on off the camera. And at some point I stayed in the village, and what used to happen was that every day around 18 to 19 hours, we'd sit around a fire and listen to stories from the elderly men and ask questions to the younger ones in terms of how they did what and proper guidance. And so by the time you grow up as a young boy into a man and now thinking of settling down, you've been well cultured. You have that perspective of the adult perspective based on so many people who've poured into you. That needs to come back. We need to stop isolating ourselves and thinking that only one parent can adequately raise a child. There has to be both parents. There's a reason why God created two people to be able to create a child. But even raising the child itself, for it to be a wholesome human being, two people have to be actively involved. So we need to get back to that, and we also need to build more and more communities of men where we have more younger men for the elderly ones, where I'm learning from you, he's learning from you, or I'm learning from him, he's learning from you, he's learning from me. And so it's passed on from one elderly man to a younger male. I think that will help close these gaps.
Excellent. And finally, the elder on the show. I think you appreciate India. And I would like you in your closing remarks to talk about one thing that has come up consistently in this discourse. Can a woman by herself raise a boy competently to the standard that we expect from a boy to a man, as you conclude among other observations? Thank you, Kauta.
Thank you very much. I think just to add on what Greyford said, and in agreement with him, you see, there is a manner in which we need to address the mindset of a boy. And I think we should also still run with the fact that it will take time for society to begin to look at a boy. You know, when you fall out of favor, when as a boy, when you fail, okay, there's nobody coming to pick you up. The males will look at you and be like, "You are a man." They'll chant you on, but within not as much pushing as can get you up. They say, "Come on, tell me, kosa, ima." You understand? But I think there should be more of at the point when we're raising a boy, there's some nurturing that the woman pushes in. But there's a certain point where that mindset of him being a fighter, okay, to pursue things and not, you know, if a girl falls, you pick her up and you be like, "Oh, sorry, my girl." But if a boy is going to fall, encourage him to say, "Okay, no, too bad you've fallen, but soldier on, don't back off." Okay? Obviously, you don't have to pamper him, go, but ask him to move on, play. I think we should still continue on that trajectory. Okay. But conversely, I think it is important for us to raise girls who appreciate that if I have the intention of being a wife, the expectation is that I'm a helper. Okay? It's a team game. Okay? Now, being a helper means if this month, for whatever reason, he can't pay rentals or whatever, it is also your responsibility because it is also your household.
Yes.
So, don't say helper is not where he's putting 10 pin, you put 2 pin. Helper is when he basically maybe fumbles, I can't do this because of this, you do it. You understand? We need to raise the girls to think like that. This notion of his money is our money, my money is my money.
That
alone.
is the wrong curriculum, isn't it?
Is very wrong.
Yeah.
In marriage, you see, if you want to stay away from marriage, no problem.
Yes.
But you cannot bring that in marriage because it disrupts the setup of marriage itself. So we also need to raise our girls to know that if your idea is to be married, there are certain appreciated standards in marriage that you are supposed to adhere to.
Yes.
So you come in as a helper, okay? And I would love to emphasize too much. Even us men, can we make sure that our wives don't interfere? Because you see, you find that when a girl turns into a woman and she's earning more money than the husband, the influence comes actually from their mothers, the aunties. You know, they'll be the ones saying, actually they'll be pushing for her because they believe that if she's not in the marriage setup, they get to benefit more directly from her than any other way. So I think that also has to be set apart. Leave them alone. Let her know that I'm in this, this is my partner. Till death do us part. We'll raise children, the children will leave the nest, we'll remain the two of us. You understand? To the exclusion of all others. Okay? So once we've got that down, okay, the man knows his role. The woman also appreciates that when I move from my parents' house and I become one with this man, it is one with him to the end. Okay?
Thank you. There you have it, viewers, and thank you once more for joining us. These definitely are conversations worth having. Men at the table. And just a high-level summary, you've heard from the views of a selection from different levels of men at different stages in life. And what's coming out here very critically is that, look, it's not just about aligning the focus on the boy child. Even the curriculum that is being given to the girl child currently is wrong. She needs to understand that one day when she comes into marriage, which is the pattern of God, the mystery of one flesh must ensure that it's not just, the body language. It is the soul, body, and spirit. And in the soul, you find the component of work and money or earnings. So the mystery of one flesh needs to be clearly understood. I've also been educated, and I hope you have been educated, that a man must learn to come out, and that coming out will only come out through forums like this one. You cannot die in silence alone and bottle it up. Stop killing yourselves, young men. If you have an issue, please drop us a note. Come on our page, Men at the Table, where we discuss issues or have conversations worth having. Tell us what the problem is. If you need more productivity from your workforce, we will come in and give you proper corporate training that doesn't just talk about the emotional intelligence, but also talks and addresses the spiritual intelligence, because man was created a spirit. And last but not least, I have found out from the conversations that these men are all very, spiritual. It would appear God rested when he did all the creation he did. On day one, he rested, and he always said it is good. And God created man, and he rested on the sixth day. But something happened. Even after God rested, he came back and created a woman. And no one has ever rested ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, thank you for connecting. If you'd like to get in touch, like our pages on Facebook, like our pages on Instagram, like our pages everywhere. You say, drop us a note. Let us know what topical issues you'd like the men to talk about. I look forward to seeing you next time. This is Dr. Francis Musonda, host.